Sword and typing with Vikas sir. Transcription number 20, volume number 1, 1600 words at the rate 100 word per minute. Be ready? Start. Mr. Deputy Chairman, sir, I extend to this respondent resolution my wholehearted support, though I wish he had extended its scope by incorporating within it to more services, but then I cannot deal with that subject now. You have assured me that the matter will be taken up on a subsequent occasion. I do not when that subsequent occasion is likely to occur. Sir, I am grateful to the Home Minister for some kind words he has said about me in regard to my interest in this subject. No doubt for long I have been urging the necessity of creating more All India services during the last 5 years or so. Ever since that recommendation on the subject was made by the States Reorganization Commission, and during the last 1 year and a half, near about that time, I have been tabling resolutions on the subject twice or thrice, but they could not come up. Of course, as they say, there are higher forces that govern the destiny of things, and so far as Parliament is concerned, it is the government and the undisputed sway of the chair that govern the dynasty of resolutions. Obviously, it was so ordained that this resolution should come up only now, and that too as a government sponsored resolution. Even as it is, I welcome it most heartily and feel enthusiastic and even jubilant about it. Sir, I sincerely congratulate the Honorable the Home Minister for the tact, the firmness, the strength, and the determination which he has shown in overcoming all the delicacies and difficulties which I am sure were there in his way. The opportunity and unwillingness of the states were there initially, I know, and I also know, sir, that about a year ago, when I tabled a question on the subject, the then Home Minister told us that the government would be only too glad to have more All India services, but then the handicap in their way was that the states were not agreeable to it. Subsequent to that, sir, about the middle of this year, I wrote to all the chief ministers requesting them to let me know their views on this subject, and I was a little unhappy to find that no chief minister replied to me saying that he was agreeable to it. One or two of them especially said that they were against it. Full stop. And next para. So all these difficulties were there in the way of the Home Minister. But I find that by his fit persuasion he has been able to win over all India chief ministers who in the conference immediately preceding the last one agreed to it in principle, and in the subsequent conference they agreed to it. It appears obviously in toto, and hence we have before us this resolution supported by the chief ministers of all the states. Sir, for that I want to congratulate most sincerely and heartily the Honorable the Home Minister. Now, sir, so far as the merits of this resolution are concerned, I do not think it is necessary for me to elaborate on them because during the last 4 years or so, ever since the publication of the report of the States Reorganization Commission, many eminent men all over the country, eminent administrator and persons who had experience of administration, including the retired comptroller and auditor general, were of the opinion that more all India services should be created. Our Honorable the Prime Minister, as also our Vice President, have on more than one occasion expressed themselves definitely in favor of having more all India services. Last year, sir, about the month of October, when addressing the Indian Police Service officers when they were going out after having had their training for a year, he expressly said that if national integration was to be maintained, it was necessary to have more all India services. That being so, I think there is not much need for us to emphasize the necessity and the utility for having more all India services. Sir, in the interest of efficiency and also in the interest of integrity, it is absolutely necessary that we should have these three all India services as also some others. The major problem these days before us is that successful implementation of the development programs has to be carried through. It is not enough that we should have big schemes. It is not enough that we should allocate large sums for the implementation of those schemes, but it is necessary that we should have competent personnel to effectively implement our schemes so that in short time we may be able to carry forward our country to economic prosperity all around. In the past, during the pre-independence period, we had quite a number of all India services, but then when we framed our constitution, we dispensed with the others, retaining only two. It appears to me that necessity has now arisen for reorganization of the all India services and to have more all India services. Full stop. Exercise number 71. Now coming back to the question of minorities, you will please find why this particular resolution has been so widely put, but in that it might include religious minority as well as a linguistic minority as well as or an economic minority, as some honorable members rightly pointed out. Now, sir, a question arises whether there ought to be any such protection insofar as a particular type of minority is concerned. I shall deal with the question of minorities at some length, but you will please find, sir, that what the honorable mover wants is that there ought to be a permanent minorities commission. It ought to be endowed with statutory powers. There are for, sir, a attempt is being made for the first time by my honorable friend, for driving a wedge between a community and a community. So far as the Constitution is concerned, as my honorable friend rightly pointed out, whenever the question of minorities arises, we have to be extremely careful. The Constitution is a very scared document which has embodied all the different aspects of the common question of India's nationality. India is one inspired of different types of languages and religions. But in the midst of all these diversities, we have to develop a common nationality. Therefore, whenever we consider the question of the development of the national and the interest of the nation, you cannot afford to think in terms either of religion or of language. It is true, sir, there are different religions. It is also true that there are different languages. Therefore, a question arose and the framers of the constitution and had to devise a constitution in the midst of the unity of India with certain diversities here and there. For that purpose, what they did was they devised a common nationality for the whole of India, and insofar as religious minorities were concerned, they were given certain rights. I would not go into the details regarding the provisions of the fundamental rights regarding the practice of religion. Certain rights have been given to the religious minorities, and beyond that, it would not be proper to bring in the religious minorities for political rights. For that, we have to be extremely careful. I would also point out that while we have to develop a common nationality, the members of the Indian national have to understand that we are one nation. Therefore, certain rights in respect of religious minorities were given. They were fundamental rights, and most of them are justiciable rights. Here we stopped so far as the religious rights are were concerned. Then a question arose: what ought to be the attitude of not only the government but the society regarding the language? It was true that there were certain interests of the regional languages. Now these languages required to be developed, but they were not meant for dividing one man from the other. So in 1956, when the states were formed to a certain extent on the basis of language, what was done was not to have a state with 100% people belonging to the regional language, because there were bound to be people belonging to different languages. That was the reason why this question was considered at great length, and the States Reorganization Commission also went into this question of linguistic minorities. It was bound to arise here and there because they were likely to feel that their rights and safeguards given to them might or might not be properly implemented. So this question was considered first by the States Reorganization Commission, and they dealt with the question whether we should have a permanent minorities commission. They went into it very carefully and shrewdly. They found out that it would not be proper to set up a permanent minorities commission because the result, if not the actual effect, would be that a permanent wage would be driven between one community and another community. So far as language minorities were concerned, they had a right. So far as their own languages were concerned, they had also an obligation to understand the language of the majority in the particular state. It is only by thus coming together that the members of the two language groups would come together and would harmoniously develop, but it was found at the time when the states reorganization commission had to consider this that some machinery should be devised for safeguarding the rights of linguistic minorities only, and after full consideration what was considered was that only in respect of linguistic minorities certain rights should be extended and certain rights should be safeguarded, and an officer should be appointed by the president for making a report on the question whether these rights of the linguistic minorities are or are not properly safeguards. Full stop.